Donald Trump is trying once again to shut down the government. This is the third attempt by him in as many years. But over the last 3.5 years, he's tried 3 times. Remember, he ordered that his MAGA Republicans not raise the debt ceiling a few years back. And even though he raised the debt ceiling 3 times when he was in office and Congress raised it for him, he tried to shut down the government back in September of 2023. He's trying to shut it down again right now because he wants an economic crash. He wants our stock market to do bad because he believes that will benefit him. It's why 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago, he posted the following almost joyously. He wrote, "Stock market's crashing. I told you so. Kamala doesn't have a clue. Biden is sound asleep. All caused by inept U.S. leadership." There was one bad day in the stock market about 4 weeks ago. Otherwise, our stock market right now is up about 50 to 55% since when Donald Trump stopped disgracing the Oval Office. The economy is in way better shape. Donald Trump lost jobs while he was in office. The only president other than Herbert Hoover, I call Donald Trump Pervert Hoover, to lose jobs. Vice President Kamala Harris and President Biden created 16 million jobs. Let me just show you this interview. You got to sometimes dig into some of these right-wing podcasts that Donald Trump does to hear the types of messaging that he's saying. That's what we do here at the MeidasTouch Network. So here he is on this right-wing podcast at the end of last week. Monica Crowley's podcast. She's like a right-wing extremist, in my opinion. And here is, she begins with the premise that, there's all of these illegal immigrants who are voting, which is not true. And then she goes, well, if they don't put the SAVE Act, this Republican messaging bill outlawing non-citizen voting, which is something that's already outlawed, will you shut down the government? And Donald Trump's like, first off, why is that even a Donald Trump thing? But he goes, yeah, they need to shut down the government. I would want the Republicans to shut it down. Here, play this clip.
On the SAVE Act, Mr. President, it was reported a couple of days ago that Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell opposes including it in the spending bill. So if that is true, I guess he wants illegals voting in huge numbers, which would likely mean your defeat. So what would you like to say to Senator McConnell and other Republicans who might oppose this? And if they don't get it into the bill, would you support shutting down the government over it?
I would shut down the government in a heartbeat if they don't get it, and if they don't get it in the bill. And part of the problem is they gave away trillions and trillions of dollars to these people on the Green New Deal, on the Inflation Reduction Act, which wasn't even meant to be for inflation reduction. They named it that so it sounded good. Now, if they don't get these bills, they should close it down, and Republicans should not approve it. No, I would disagree with them in that you can get a lot. I mean, look at the debt ceiling. Look what happened with debt ceiling. They extended it into the term of the next president.
So you were calling today on
nothing.
Senator. I'm sorry, sir.
Nothing for it.
Right. Are you calling on Senator
it into
McConnell?
The term of the next president and got nothing for it.
Are you calling on Senator McConnell then and all Senate Republicans to make sure, and the House Republicans too, to make sure the SAVE Act is in the spending bill?
Well, it should be in the bill. For some reason, they don't do it. They don't do things that can really help our nation. It should be in the bill. And if it's not in the bill, you ought to close it up.
So the MAGA Republicans come up with a contrived messaging bill called the SAVE Act, outlawing non-citizen voting, something that is already outlawed, and then they want to shut down the government based on that. I want to remind you, though, that this is a pattern by Donald Trump. First, let me show you what he said about the debt ceiling. And at all times, you had Donald Trump not simply trying to undermine President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris, with different messaging or trying to appeal to the American voters. No, what he was trying to do was destroy America, Trump has consistently done things, whether it's kill a bipartisan border bill, whether it is currently threatening the chairman of the Federal Reserve, Chairman Powell, not to lower interest rates, right? Whether it's Donald Trump posting in all caps, economic collapse, the stock market's crashing, to try to encourage that and cause fear and panic. Remember 2 years ago, all the MAGAs were trying to create like a run on the banks at that time. They're trying to undermine it at all costs. So remember when Donald Trump sat down at that CNN town hall, whatever you even want to call it, and then Donald Trump said that they shouldn't raise the debt ceiling, and that America should default on its national debt, which would have caused economic calamity. Just think about what he's saying here. Play this clip.
You think the U.S. should default if the White House does not agree to the spending cuts Republicans are demanding?
Well, you might as well do it now because you'll do it later. Because we have to save this country. Our country is dying. Our country is being destroyed by stupid people, by very stupid people.
You once said that using the debt ceiling as a negotiating wedge just could not happen. You said that when you were in the Oval Office.
That's when I was president.
So why is it different now that you're out of office?
Because now I'm not president.
Now, Donald Trump was asked by Caitlin Collins about that and said, hey, when you were in office, you used the debt ceiling. You raised the debt ceiling. The Congress raised it. And you once said using the debt ceiling as a negotiating wedge could not happen. Why are you changing your views right now? Play the clip.
Save this country. Our country is dying. Our country is being destroyed by stupid people, by very stupid people.
You once said that using the debt ceiling as a negotiating wedge just could not happen. You said that when you were in the Oval Office.
That's when I was president.
So why is it different now that you're out of office?
Because now I'm not president.
And just so you can see for yourself, this is when Donald Trump was in office, and here's where he said that the debt ceiling should never be used as a negotiating wedge. So you can see that just everything he says is just like utterly lying. Play this clip.
I can't imagine anybody ever even thinking of using the debt ceiling as a negotiating wedge. When I first came into office, I asked about the debt ceiling, and I understand debt ceilings, and I certainly understand the highest rated credit ever in history and a debt ceiling. And I said, I remember to Senator Schumer and to Nancy Pelosi, would anybody ever use that to negotiate with? They said, absolutely not. That's a sacred element of our country. They can't use the debt ceiling to negotiate.
All right. And then in September of 2023, here's what Donald Trump said about funding the government. He said, the Republicans lost big on debt ceiling, got nothing, and now are worried they will be blamed for a budget shutdown. For the wrong, whoever is president will be blamed. In this case, crooked as hell Joe Biden. Our country is being systematically destroyed by radical left Marxists, fascists, and thugs, the Democrats. Unless you get everything, shut it down, close the border, stop the weaponization of justice, and end election interference. We must have honest elections. It's time Republicans learn how to fight. And so there he was saying to shut down the government in September of 2023 after trying to have America default on its debt then. And then, as I said, and Donald Trump's like, unless we deal with the border. Well, President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris were trying to deal with the border. They did. President Biden issued an executive order. Now border crossings are down lower right now than when Trump was in office. That's a fact, but okay. I mean, you want to just hear Donald Trump in his own words bragging about killing the bipartisan border deal, whose lead negotiator was the conservative Republican senator of Oklahoma, James Lankford. Here Donald Trump brags that he killed a bipartisan border deal. Play the clip.
So on Monday, go vote. Early voting, go vote. Let's not forget that this week we also had another massive victory that every conservative should celebrate. We crushed crooked Joe Biden's disastrous open borders bill. Crushed it. Mike Johnson did a very good job, and the whole group did a great job in Congress. We crushed.
Like, who does that? Who gets in the way of a bipartisan border deal that would help we the people and then brag about it? Donald Trump did. Just so you can see for yourself, so you know I'm not like making this up about this so-called Republican senator from Oklahoma. Here's James Lankford. If you want to Google him, you can see how conservative James Lankford is. Like, as conservative as you get. He negotiated a bipartisan border deal. He led it. That was like his main issue. It had everything that the Republicans previously wanted. President Biden was willing to make the compromise. Vice President Kamala Harris was willing to make the compromise. And then the MAGAs killed this bill because Trump told them to kill the bill. Here's James Lankford in his own words saying it. Here, play this clip.
In fact, I had a popular commentator 4 weeks ago that I talked to that told me flat out, before they knew any of the contents of the bill, nothing was out at that point, that told me flat out, if you try to move a bill that solves the border crisis during this presidential year, I will do whatever I can to destroy you.
And now Donald Trump's at it again. You know, as I told you before in this video, Donald Trump is threatening the chairman of the Federal Reserve, Chairman Powell, not to lower interest rates because that would benefit we the people. And Trump thinks it's a winning issue for him to have chaos at the border. It's a winning issue for him to have higher interest rates. He thinks a winning issue if the economy is doing bad, which is why he wants the government shut down. He's rooting against us. And now let me just show you this. Okay, in terms of what caused inflation, you've heard me on the MeidasTouch network before explain inflation is not just like pop up. Okay, it has sources, it has a cause, right? And the cause is Donald Trump added $8 trillion to our debt, $8 trillion. Donald Trump mishandled COVID, screwed up our supply lines because he didn't build infrastructure, and then recklessly printed money in the PPP program that had no accountability, that benefited millionaires and decamillionaires versus the people who needed the money the most in small businesses. So he screwed it up, and also he had no plan, not only no plan, he encouraged price gouging to take place by not enforcing any antitrust laws. You add that together, those are the ingredients for inflation. That's it. It's very simple economics about what took place. But you don't have to take my word for it. Why don't you listen to Republican Ron DeSantis of Florida about where the inflation came from and why Donald Trump caused it? Here's what Ron DeSantis said. Play the clip.
And you know who else is missing in action? Donald Trump is missing in action. He should be on this stage tonight. He owes it to you to defend his record where they added $7.8 trillion to the debt. That set the stage for the inflation that we have now.
You don't have to take my word for it. Why don't you take Nikki Haley's word for it? Okay, Republican Nikki Haley, here's what she said about Donald Trump. Play the clip.
I don't care about polls. What I care about the fact is that no one is telling the American people the truth. The truth is that Biden didn't do this to us. Our Republicans did this to us too. When they passed that $2.2 trillion COVID stimulus bill, they left us with 90 million people on Medicaid, 42 million people on food stamps. No one has told you how to fix it. I'll tell you how to fix it. They need to stop the spending. They need to stop the borrowing. They need to eliminate the earmarks that the Republicans brought back in. And they need to make sure they understand these are taxpayer dollars. It's not their dollars. And while they're all saying this, you have Ron DeSantis, you've got Tim Scott, you've got Mike Pence. They all voted to raise the debt. And Donald Trump added $8 trillion to our debt. And our kids are never going to forgive us for this. And so at the end of the day, you look at the 2024 budget, Republicans asked for $7.4 billion in earmarks. Democrats asked for $2.8 billion. So you tell me who are the big spenders. I think it's time for an accountant in the White House.
Vice President, I can go through all these other issues with you. I can explain to you how Donald Trump was the one who released the 5,000 Taliban terrorists without including the Afghan government in the deal. And then those Taliban terrorists immediately took over Afghanistan. How Donald Trump withdrew the troops but kept like 2,500 troops still in Afghanistan, made them very vulnerable, shut down all of the other bases. other than one, and then refused during the transition to President Biden to provide any informational, wouldn't even give President Biden pens and pencils and notepads, yet alone share any of the intelligence. They refused to even meet with Biden's people. There's all these photos of Pompeo and the leader of the Taliban who they negotiated. They released the terrorists. So again, this is a situation where the arsonist is Trump, the firefighter was Biden-Harris, and the corporate media wanted to both sides it and just allow Donald Trump to push these narratives. But what I'm just showing you with the data and calling it out is we have to be 10, 20, 50 steps ahead of him, okay? I want you to be very cognizant of this shutdown issue and why Donald Trump is trying to do it. He wants an economic crash. He wants our country to look like the Trump media stock, because as the American stock market is up about 50 to 55% since Trump left, here's the Trump stock over the past 6 months, down about 52 to 55%, down as much as the U.S. stock market is up. Imagine if that was the U.S. stock market. Imagine where your 401k would be if your 401k had Trump media stock versus how the economy's been handled under Biden and Harris. It's just that simple. Stop listening to the propaganda. Just focus on the facts and take a look at yourself in the mirror. Take a look at the facts. Take a look at the data. Pull yourself away from the yelling and the talking heads, and let's just talk facts. That's what we do here at the Meidas. We just talk facts at the MeidasTouch Network and give you the data. You decide, but that's the data. Thanks for watching, and let's get to 4 million subscribers. Appreciate you.
Love this video? Make sure you stay up to date on the latest breaking news and all things Meidas by signing up to the MeidasTouch newsletter at MeidasTouch.com/newsletter.